Hello everyone. So today I'm back with a new poem. So it's Breakfast by Jacques Prevert. So what comes to your mind when you think about your breakfast? So it's your first meal in a day. Okay. So we'll see who's our writer for this poem. So Jacques Prevert was a French poet and a screenwriter, and he's known for his lyrical and accessible style. And his poetry often explored themes of love, loss, and mundane aspects of daily life. So we'll see the context and historical background of our poem. So this poem was written in the mid 20th century and it was marked by post-war reflection in France. So the themes of routine and emotional isolation is reflected here um, by incorporating social feelings of resistance and search for meaning of life. Okay, so here you can see the poem, the original one, but we'll see its translation. So here's the translation. Let me read out the poem first. He poured the coffee into the cup. He poured the milk into the cup of coffee. He added the sugar to the coffee and milk. He stirred it. With a spoon, he drank the coffee and put back the cup. Without speaking to me, he lit a cigarette. He blew some rings with the smoke. He flicked the ashes into the ashtray without speaking to me, without looking at me. He got up. He put his hat on his head. He put on his raincoat because it was raining. He went out into the rain without a word, without looking at me. And I took my head in my hands and I wept. So it's the poem. So what comes to your mind? So there's a kind of a problem here. Yes. So it's not the typical breakfast we see, right? Okay. So what are the themes in the poem? What are the themes? Before that, we'll discuss the poem. He poured the coffee into the cup. He poured the milk into the cup of coffee. He added the sugar to the coffee and milk. He stirred it with a teaspoon. He drank the coffee and put back the cup. So all these lines, right? All these lines depicts the typical daily life, typical morning. But from here, without speaking to me, he lit a cigarette. Without speaking to me, right? He lit a cigarette. He blew some rings with the smoke. He flicked the ashes into the ashtray without speaking to me, without looking at me. So this emphasizes a problem, a disconnection between the narrator, the speaker, and the person who he is referred to. So what do you understand by the narrator, the speaker, and the person called he? Yes, it's husband and wife. So he got up, he put his hat on his head, he put on his raincoat because it was raining. He went out into the rain. Okay? He went out into the rain without a word, without looking at me. So this kind of weather, it's a typical condition of a Western country. Okay? So without a word, without looking at me. So the writer has used repetition here, right? Without thought. And I took my head in my hands and I wept. So the final the final scene, the final picture comes to our mind is a weeping of a woman, right? Okay. So considering the themes, so it's monotonous daily routine of people. The poem describes a very ordinary and mundane activity, someone having breakfast. So having a life that is not changing. So it's monotonous. So you need a change in your life, right? that is depicted here. So then we have silence. So the absence of dialogue or interaction between the characters convey emotional distance and isolation. So here what you can see is only the speaker speaks, and even the speaker doesn't speak with the person called he, who we refer to as her husband, right? So that silence conveys emotional distance and miscommunication and her isolation. So no one is there for her to express ideas. Okay. So then we have relationship dynamics. So lack of communication, lack of communication and emotional detachment. So it comes with the silence and miscommunication. Then we have loneliness and alienation. So all these themes are interconnected, right? So so the main root cause for this problem may be a one aspect. Probably it's miscommunication, right? So communication is a main aspect of every relationship. It's not for the husband and wife, but for each and every relationship, right? So then we have tone. The tone of the poem is detached and melancholic, reflecting the emotional distance between the couple. So that's why I say the atmosphere created through the poem, uh, rainy weather, gloomy weather, it also supports the tone of the poem, right? There's no there's no glamorous atmosphere mentioned in the poem. So the mood is conveyed through the use of simple, repetitive language and imagery of everyday life. So what are the literary devices used in the poem? So Prevert uses repetition, so I mentioned it earlier, to emphasize the monotony of the routine. So if the same thing happens again and again, right? The simplicity of the language and the enjambment create a flowing and melancholic rhythm. So it mirrors the mechanical nature of the actions. Also, the poem's minimalist style with a short, simple sentences. So it's emphasized emotional weight of the moment without outwardly stating it. So it's a minimalist style, like it doesn't have like uh, long sentences and difficult words, like difficult vocabulary that it uses, like vocabulary that is familiar to you, right? So next we have imagery and symbols. So the poem uses simple imagery of everyday actions such as drinking coffee and smoking. So what does drinking coffee symbolizes? So it symbolizes daily routine. I mentioned it earlier, like the repetition is used to used to emphasize the daily routine, and here the drinking coffee, that symbol symbolizes daily routine. Then we have smoking, so it symbolizes the emotional disconnect, the, the emotional disconnect between the husband and wife. So the personal reflection. So this poem resonates with the reader because it captures the silent struggle within relationships. You may or you may not have experienced this, but in your life, definitely you have experienced it or you will experience it one day. So it's always a personal reflection, right? So its relevance today lies in its depiction of how routine and lack of communication can lead to emotional distance. So here finally we come to the conclusion. So throughout this session, we discussed about the themes of routine and emotional distance and how the use of simple imagery and repetition is incorporated in the poem, and it reflects broader societal feelings of disconnection, and also the poem resonates with universal human experiences. Yes, this is not related to the writer, but also for each and every human being. So I have some questions for y'all. So just think of the answers, right? So how does the poem make you feel? So what kind of feelings comes to your mind? Is it happy? Or is it sad? Or is it melancholic? So what is it? So then second question is, can you relate to the themes of routine and emotional distance? I mean, do you have these experiences in your life? Right? You don't have a change in your life, so it's like it's it's boring. You have a boring life, and with that comes emotional distance, miscommunication, and everything. So, can you relate to these themes? So, my third question is, what do you think about the poem's use of simple imagery? So, do you think the imagery is important in the poem? So, if not, it's not useful. So, just say why. Okay, you have to give your proof. Also, here I have some essay type questions for you all. So, try to answer these questions by yourself. So, how does Jacques Prevert use minimalism and repetition in the breakfast to convey emotional distance between the characters? Right? Minimalism, like use of simple language and repetition, right? So, and short sentences as well. So, to convey emotional distance between the characters. I mean, the husband and wife. So the second question is, in what ways does the poem The Breakfast reflect universal experiences of isolation and routine in human relationships? My third question is, how does the absence of dialogue in The Breakfast influence the reader's interpretation of the relationship between the characters? So do you think if there is dialogue between the characters in the poem, so would it be useful? So, what does this absence of dialogue in the breakfast uh, create? Like interpretation of what we call a miscommunication, a disconnect between the characters. So, okay. So, try to answer these questions by yourself. Think about new aspects and do right. So, here we come to the end of our session. So, thank you very much. Stay tuned for a new video.